But first, it's the gem.
Perfect.
With, let me be like Trump. Let's talk about the gem tomorrow. Whether or not that continues, let's talk about it tomorrow. I'm just playing.
Now I know.
All right, go ahead.
So there are so many nonsense critiques and reasons that people in capitalist press try to use to explain why there's such a stark wealth divide in the world. One of my personal favorites was a few years ago in Forbes magazine. There was a cultural piece about why capitalism hasn't really been so successful at fighting poverty in the Middle East.
Right.
And it was because they say inshallah, which means God willing.
Oh,
So
and
it's
that contradicts that, like, no, you have
So
to make it
there's too much
happen.
uncertainty in the
That's right.
market for it to be a successful system.
Well, Tony Robbins was just in Dubai, so we should have that taken care of. We're good to go. Don't worry about it.
Well, obviously, no amount of cultural critique or manners or personality shifts are going to be what changes the world. And it's also not even the case of how Europe or the United States became such powerful forces. They took and plundered and they got their wealth. You have to have something to invest in capitalism. And they took their wealth from the rest of the world. Ernest Mandel, who is a great Marxist economist, was able to add up the value of all the gold and silver that was taken from Latin America up until 1660, the booty extracted from Indonesia by the Dutch East India Company from 1650 to 1780, the harvest reaped by French capital in the 18th century slave trade, the profits from slave labor in the British Antilles, and from a half century of British looting in India. The total exceeds the capital investment in all European industrial enterprises operated by steam in about 1800.
Inshallah.
Yeah, and that
Ancient history,
It's
friends.
ancient history.
by the way, that's from the book Open Veins of Latin America, which everyone should read.
Stay current.
No, but obviously you see that, the actual extraction of wealth from the rest of the world was key to the economic advantages that Europe enjoyed. And obviously in the United States, the slave trade, the amount of stolen wealth and labor from, African Americans drove American capitalism. And not only that, but also the use of slave labor, but also slaves themselves as collateral was a major factor in the American finance system that also flowed into European banks as well. So the point is that the capital that was used to create capitalism success in capitalism in Europe and in the United States was capital that was stolen from the rest of the world. And that's why when we talk about the rich and powerful in our society, we also need to recognize that that wealth was created from extraction and stealing from the rest of the world. But just because the colonial era is over doesn't mean that these systems aren't continuing. There was a really interesting report that came out from the Global Financial Integrity Group, which is a great think tank of a bunch of economists from all around the world, who found that since 1980, $13.4 trillion from developing countries have outflowed out of the developing countries and back into the United States and Europe. And that's primarily through capital flight and also through debt extraction. So these systems are still continuing today. And when we think about these sums, I mean, these are absolutely significant amount of money that have a huge impact on the ability of these countries to be able to invest in their own society and their infrastructure. And we talk about all the time when we're talking about left-wing governments coming into power, one of the first things that happens is a massive outflow of capital flight from these countries. So this is not just a question of doing the right thing. This is a real serious question about democracy, because we have such power and such resources that are being able to be extracted from communities whenever they implement their own democratic will, that in fact, punish countries. And we understand how debt is used by the United States and Europe to try to force countries to participate in an economic system, even if they don't want to participate in it, to force austerity on people. So when we're talking about trying to change this country, we very much need to be recognizing these institutions within the United States that play a major role in the extraction of wealth from the rest of the world. And any kind of socialist movement cannot just end at the United States border. We really need to recognize that as the imperial seat in the world, that we have a responsibility to try to dismantle these systems as much as we can if we are able to come into power. Obviously, it's something that's very difficult to talk about while we're still trying to fight our way in, but it's the kind of awareness that we need, and also the recognition that we need to be trying to forge these bonds with leftists around the world, because we really do need to have larger international organizations.
Lula Libre.
Yeah, seriously. And also, to start really thinking about being able to implement some form of capital controls, and also try and honor other countries' right to be able to make sure that their bourgeoisie is not able to just, pack up and move away anytime that a leftist government comes into power. Certainly, organizations like the IMF and the World Bank are major parts of this, and we need to end the kind of de facto rule of these organizations by the United States and Europe. These systems, the problems that we face really are international. We really need to be building an international community that's able to fight these, and we need to recognize upon what travesties that the wealth that the West enjoys comes from.
Absolutely. Pretend I'm Tulsi Gabbard for a second. I look at that as
Tulsi?
a soldier.
Yeah,
Think about that from the perspective of being a soldier. What are the objectives, Thomas? What are we trying to do? T tweeted out the other day. He tweeted one of the new Tulsi Gabbard workout videos, and he's like, "She's trying to thirst trap her way to the presidency,
absolutely.
and I'm here for it." And I agree. I agree with him. I am like, there was plausible deniability with one of those videos, and now she's just like, "Hey, here's box jumps." It's like,
Well,
all right,
she
cool.
talked about it. With,
respect. What?
She talked about it with Dave Rubin at the end of the Rubin interview.
Why are you putting out these videos?
Well, and she frames it as, it's like, I just love getting all the comments like, "You're my fitspiration." It's like, that's not what this is about. This isn't about fitness, Tulsi. Come on now.
Yeah.
Let's be real with the American people.
If I was extrapolating personality sets from Twitter behavior, I would guess it's not a lot of Fitspiration.
I know a couple frat boys from
It's spiration. By spiration, I mean an inappropriate emoji.
Types of objective journalists that never criticize Tulsi on Twitter. Not fit, folks.
Very objective.
Not,
Very fit. But that's the thing. It's like, it's the classic dynamic where, I like her better than her fan base, because I respect that. She's like, I look at what's the objective. I want people tweeting sweat emojis at me. You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.